I'm sorry, but this video too is going to happen in my apartment. There will be some documents that go up over where I'm talking, so you won't have to look at me the whole time. It'll be the list that I was going to go over anyway. I did this video in front of my wife's X5m, and for whatever reason, it just didn't work. You couldn't hear me. The lighting was all wrong, and I've updated the list a little bit, so I wanted to redo the video to be a little bit more accurate to what we're actually going to do. So we're going to start with the list. What I'm going to start with is what the car has now. I'm just going to recap that just for people who don't know. I'm going to talk about what we plan to do in the order we plan to do it. And then I'll show you a list of kind of what the car is supposed to look like after stage 1 is complete. I've got it broken up into 3 different stages just because we don't have unlimited funds to update the car. So I'm trying to hit some really high yield stuff first, and then some stuff that I want but don't necessarily need second. And then last after that, it's going to be more of, at that point, the car will need some maintenance, so we'll just kind of see where it's at. That'll be a while down the road. We might not even have the car by the time I get to stage 3. We might have switched to something else. So we'll go ahead and start with what we have now. So these were all done by the previous owner. They were pretty tasteful for the most part. The only ones that we didn't keep were the forged 22-inch wheels. We went back to the factory 20s. I just like those so much better. So he did the F85 X5m Drilled Rotors. They are the exact same size. They're just drilled and look like the other M cars, so like the M5, M4, M3, things like that. It just blends a little bit better. They're also a 2-piece design, which is nice, so save a little bit of weight. He had H&R 12mm wheel spacers on the front and in the rear, so we'll be putting those back on once we get our wheel studs in. We'll talk about that in a little bit. He did H&R lowering springs in the front and then adjusted the air springs in the rear to match, so it's about a 3-inch drop front and rear. He has that Avon Android screen, which we'll do a review on that in the future. He has the LCI headlights on the front, and he has blacked out most of the trim decals. So the M decal, the side vents, the roof rails, everything is a nice gloss black. Even the exhaust tips are nice gloss black. So it's a really nice cohesive look, especially on a white car. So now we'll move into our stages of modification. So as you can see, we've got 3 different stages. The first stage is going to be stuff that I really feel like needs to be addressed, or it's just so cheap and easy that I'm going to go ahead and do it now just so I can enjoy it while we have the car. So we're going to start with a lower temperature thermostat and an oil cooler valve from N63 intake. That's going to bring the temperatures of the engine down to a much more reasonable temperature like most other engines have. Gas mileage and our emissions might get a tiny bit worse, but I'm not a big manufacturer. I'm not monitored by the government the same way. I'll still pass emissions, but it should allow the rubber and plastic parts on the engine to last much longer. While we're doing that, we're also going to put a 1.4 bar coolant cap on from a 35D instead of the rest of the petrol-powered cars. So that should, again, help the coolant system a little bit. We'll be doing ECS tuning wheel studs. Not only will they allow us to run the spacers, but they're also going to make wheel changes easier, and they're stronger than wheel bolts. We'll be installing a BMC air filter. Real simple drop in. We're also going to pop out the charcoal filters while we're in there, and then we'll do some dyno results on that in the future. I think that'll be a fun video. We're going to be painting the calipers. It is Estoril blue is the color that all BMW M calipers are painted now. This was the last car to not have painted calipers. They started painted calipers as an option towards the end of the run. We have black calipers, and I think the blue will just add a nice little pop behind the factory wheels. And then just to make the paint last a little bit longer, we're going to be doing a ceramic coating on it. We'll be doing a little bit of touch-up paint before that, because once you put the ceramic coating on, you can't touch up any paint chips. So I'm going to go ahead and touch those up first and do the ceramic coating myself in the garage, and we'll see how that turns out. And that'll fill out stage 1. So just reliability stuff or super low hanging fruit. None of it is particularly expensive. We're also going to be doing tires. That's not really a modification. It's just something we have to take care of. So I'll be doing a review on the Federal tires we put on here. I've had great success with them on my E39 and on my R53, and then eventually on the 350Z. So I'm going to try these out on the X5m just to see how they work. Moving down to stage 2, it's just things that I don't feel like I need right now. We don't need the hitch right now, but we will definitely need it in the future when we move, and it's just going to make the car a lot more functional. We'll be doing a catch can setup. The only reason that's not in stage 1 is because it's going to have to be a custom setup, and I'm not home for very long. I don't know if I'm going to be able to order all the parts and work it out in a proper way. I don't want to rush it and mess something up, so it's something that might have to be done in the future. But I want to prevent as much buildup on the valve as I possibly can, but it already has 65,000 miles on it, so it's still probably going to need a cleaning at some point, even if I put the catch can on it now anyway. The tune, obviously, don't need it, really want it. Add a bunch of power. It's the best modification, bar none, for these cars. So it's something we will definitely do. It's just My wife doesn't need it right now, and I can't really play with it because I'm not home, so there's no reason to push the motor while I'm not there to fix it. And of course, the exhaust, again, my wife's not going to be driving around with the exhaust valves open anyway, so again, that's more for me. We're going to try to do that first out of stage 2. I've already got the parts ordered for it. We're going to do an X pipe, and we're going to bypass the muffler that is specifically on the valved exhaust tip. So it should be a straight pipe from the catalytic converters back once we do the X pipe and take out that little added muffler. But when you have the exhaust valves closed, it should sound stock and normal. So it should be a nice split personality of completely stock and quiet or much louder than stock, and it shouldn't cost that much money. So we'll cross that when we come to it, but it should be a really helpful video for you guys as an alternative to some of the more expensive aftermarket exhaust if all you're after is sound. Stage 3 goes again further into either I don't want to have to deal with it right now or I don't think it's necessary. The LCI taillights would be a nice addition to kind of round out the facelift on the car, but they're not necessary. I think the factory taillights look fine the way they are on the 2010, and it's about $500 for a set. And when the rear taillights are working perfectly fine, it's hard for me to pay $500 to replace them without really any added benefit to the car. So I'll keep an eye out for those, but that is a way down the road thing. Ceramic coating the catalytic converters and putting on some turbo blankets is one thing that I really want to do. It's going to take a lot of time and effort to get all of that out. I'm going to have to drop it off to someone to get it ceramic coated and disassemble the turbos to get the exhaust housings coated, and then bring that all back, reassemble everything, put it back. It's going to take me some time, and my wife is going to have another car to drive while we do that. So that'll have to happen when I'm out of school and we're in the same place, and she can get around in one of our other cars while her car is being worked on. I think it's very important. I think controlling underhood heat on these cars is a very big thing. Unfortunately, GT22 turbo blankets are kind of expensive because most people make GT25 stuff or T3, T4 stuff. It's not a very common turbo size for them to make parts for, so you're only going to have like the really nice brands that cover everything. I'm okay with nice brands, but it would be nice to not pay $400 for 2 turbo blankets. But while everything's out, we'll do some extra heat tape, look for anything that looks susceptible to heat. Again, we're ceramic coating the caps, so we're not going to wrap the caps, and we're not going to put high flow caps or catless downpipes on because I just don't want to deal with the emissions and the smell. It's my wife's car. It's just not worth it. Again, she doesn't need a 700 horsepower daily. We're already being a little ridiculous as it is, but by ceramic coating them, it should keep some of the heat out of the engine bay without putting too much heat into the caps. Turbo blankets and the exhaust housings, we'll ceramic coat those and put the blankets on. The combination should really cut down on that engine bay heat and again make things last longer, and we'll get a little bit of extra power out of that too just by keeping the heat in the turbines. So as you can see, not a huge list of things we're going to do. I mean, there's still a decent amount of stuff, but it's an M car. It already has huge brakes. It already has great suspension. It already has big wheels and tires. It already has more than enough power. And the more power we add, the more wear we're going to add the other drivetrain components. So we don't need to go too crazy with it, especially when we have other cars that I want to buy and other cars that I want to modify, like the Z, the M5, the Mini Cooper, eventually the Boxster, and the GT350. We've got a lot of stuff on our plate. We don't really need to put a lot of time and money into my wife's car for her to just drive back and forth to work. So here's what everything should look like once we're done with stage 1. Again, the exhaust might squeak into stage 1, it might not, we'll just see. I mean, that's a pretty well-rounded list of a little bit of cooling modifications, a little bit of aesthetic modifications, a little bit of performance stuff, just some low-hanging fruit, just trying to take it to that next level without going too crazy. Of course, if you guys have any recommendations, you can feel free to drop those in the comments. I've done a decent amount of research on this. I am by no means an expert on this chassis, considering we've only been working with it for about 6 months now. I feel pretty confident in my list. I feel like it's not going to change too much with time, but of course I'm always open to suggestions. But if you want to see all these videos, I've got a lot of great stuff planned for the chassis, a lot of before and after dyno polls, a lot of before and after drag racing stuff. So we're going to do a lot with it. I think it's going to be a really good addition to the channel. So of course, stick around if you guys want to see that. So hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next week.